Welcome to the Lubbock or Leave It podcast, a recruiting-centric podcast on RedRaidersports.com, brought to you by our title sponsor, Carnley Properties. Clayton Carnley, you guys know him from the board, but in the Austin metro area, any of your real estate needs, please give him a call. We're going to include all of his information, but a big shout out to Carnley Properties. Get a hold of their team. And again, I have heard nothing but great things about working with them. That's been, buying a house. We're both homeowners. That's one of the biggest decisions you make. You got to have somebody like Clayton and his team guiding you through that process. So we'll include their contact info. Again, give them a holler. And Ben, with that being said, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing great. My Phoenix Suns are up 1-0 in their series, and so life is peachy right now.
Yeah, I think the last podcast I even ended with like a jab at the Suns, and then here we are a week later, and my team's eliminated, and your team's up 1-0 in the semifinals. So cool.
I heard Luca had a good, round of golf today, though. So maybe you should take some solace in that. I'm just
man, he's the only one that gets to golf. The rest of the team, they've got to go hit the gym. Anyway, but we're here to talk about Texas Tech recruiting, and the exciting part, Ben, is we actually have a lot to talk about. We've been talking really about the same prospects and the same timelines ad nauseum. But here we are. It is June 8th. It's a Tuesday evening, and we've, just wrapped up talking to the majority of these prospects that we're going to talk about. But the dead period finally ended on June 1st. Coaches were able to host recruits on campus. They've had camps. They'll continue to have camps, more official visitors coming in. I say we just jump into it. I know we had a mixed group, and we'll continue to have that with unofficial visitors as well as official visits. So if you want to go ahead and talk about Derrick Brown, I know you guys had a chance to talk after his time in Lubbock.
Yeah, he was, so recruits always pop up, and to me, he was kind of a surprise. I don't know if I expected him to show up on day one. We found out he has a sibling who goes to Texas Tech, and it was kind of a move-in deal. But at the same time, it appears that Brown does have serious interest because he had an official visit scheduled to Texas A&M, and I believe now that's going to be going back to Lubbock instead. And so, yeah, he had good things to say. I think that's Aaron Hodges' relationship right there. The new director of recruiting, he's come in and, I feel like he's made some big waves with some of these top-rated guys. And Brown is, a borderline 4-star recruit with a lot of Power 5 offers. So he had good things to say. He did visit Texas. He has one to Baylor, I believe, this weekend, and then, his return visit to Tech. So I expect those 3 programs to factor in significantly. And then he's also set to release a top 8 tomorrow. So we know how excited we get over top 8 lists. Big news tomorrow. But no, that he's one of those guys that, a lot of regional competition and 5.7 3-star recruits. So that's a top target without a doubt.
Yeah, I know, we as recruiting guys, maybe we get caught up in it, but as you described that, for anyone listening, make the top 8, be one of his visits. Let's say he ends up committing to a Texas or an A&M or somebody. At least you're in it, right? And I think the key part there is the connection to Hodges, and you're really starting to see some of this new hire and some of the expansion of the recruiting staff really start to pay off. And I really think, not that anybody necessarily wants to hear this, but we're going to get to the 2023 and the 2024 prospects here in a moment. But to have them on campus, to get these highly rated guys in town and around your program, that pays huge dividends in the long run. Whether or not these guys actually come to Tech, having Tech, in the top schools for some of these guys and fighting for the top talent, you have to start somewhere. So again, I just wanted to clarify, I don't view any of that as a negative, but maybe dissecting those comments a little bit differently. I was surprised to see Brown in town. He had mentioned to us at the Under Armour camp, but that doesn't always end up happening, right, Ben?
Yeah, especially when he has offers like Oklahoma and Texas, sometimes some of these kids maybe give us what we want to hear or what they think we want to hear. And then, he ends up visiting OU, and that's the end of his commitment. But no, he did tell me plans to return for an official. So good news there. And like you mentioned, just building those relationships with not only the player, but the coaches as well. All these different schools, these are all good things. in my opinion.
All right. And then the next guy who was an unofficial visit that I know you spoke with was, we have him listed as an athlete, but Sydney Mbanasour. The name sounds familiar because he's part of this super athletic family. Oldest brother went to OU, middle brother at Texas Tech. What's Sydney's story?
Yeah, so he's a wide receiver, listed as an athlete. I think he can kind of, maybe some programs see him bulking up and maybe playing some rush end or something like that at 6'6", 208, I believe. He's just an athletic guy who he doesn't have an offer yet. And I believe he got hurt last year and doesn't have much film out there. But he's a guy who he told me he's just looking this summer to go to these different camps and show coaches what he's about and try to earn those opportunities. But just physically, you like what you see. You can't teach size at 6'6", and so whether he's a receiver or the coaches plan to move him around, just having that relationship with his brother on the team, he's a guy to keep an eye on too.
All right. Well, I know in terms of the unofficial visits, arguably one of the top ones was Austin Kawecki, and I got a chance to talk to him. For those that may not know and listening to the podcast here, he's an offensive tackle from Frisco, Lebanon Trail. His parents went to Texas Tech. His grandparents, his aunts, uncles, his sister's a current student. He grew up around Texas Tech. However, when we talked to him, this is also a young man with, I think, nearly 20 or over 20 offers. And, just as a frame of reference, he left Lubbock and went straight to an official visit to USC. He's got visits to Baylor, Oklahoma State, UNC, Colorado. So there's plenty of competition for this young man. But I guess all that to say, he was pretty much one of the first prospects in town. When we talk about that in the intro, a 15 to 16 month long dead period, when I asked him about that, he said it felt like he was getting all the special attention. Everything is about what he wanted to do. So he definitely felt that love. And what's interesting about the unofficial visit in the scenario where his grandparents are in town is that he was here for 3 or 4 days. And so the coaches were, not only were they welcoming the team back from a break and getting workouts started, but they also had the youth camps and everything gearing up for the prospect camps that started over the weekend and that will continue through the month. And so I just think, official visits are great, and we're going to get into those. But, I think almost being able to be there Tuesday through Friday or Saturday or whenever he left, that was probably a more unique visit with being, the center of attention than you would get on an official visit, with a larger group.
Yeah, and Austin's a guy, obviously a lot of competition for him. He trains here in DFW with Donald Hawkins. He's an O-line coach, trainer type. He former University of Texas player. And so I was actually able to go out to one of his camps back in March, I believe, and it got to see Austin. But just, me personally, and I know now you live here too, I always enjoy these DFW area recruits because then we get to go talk to them and see them perform in games and things like that. So, but just another one of these offensive line targets, a high 3-star recruit. And, obviously offensive line is a position that a lot of people have discussed. So another key recruit, here with Kawecki.
So the last unofficial, well, not the last, but one of the last, I'll mention 2 more guys on the unofficials just because, there's a pretty impressive group. The next guy I'll mention, we have him listed as an athlete, but I know he's being recruited at wide receiver. His first name is Che. His brother's name is Chucks, who's on the team. His last name is what, Ben?
Wabuko, I'm not, something like that.
Yeah, set you up for that one. So I don't know the proper pronunciation, but his brother's a tremendous athlete, is a kick returner for the Red Raiders, scat back, is really a great kid all around. And you and I have had a chance to get to know his father as well, because he's a trainer, much like the gentleman you had just mentioned, and just a really great guy. And so I know that you'd had a chance to talk to him. But what I wanted to say before I handed it off to you on that is that Che is not just Chuck's brother. I would go even further and say that, they're different players, but very, very similar twitch and speed. But Che, from a recruiting standpoint, he already has 12 offers. And the majority of these are Power 5. And some of these offers, Michigan State, Minnesota, Purdue, Baylor, or excuse me, not Baylor. I misspoke there. Pittsburgh. I mean, there's Kansas. I could keep going, but it's not just an offer list of smaller schools or anything. So, I mean, I think that the coaches are seriously evaluating him. And I believe you did talk to Dad and you got some feedback. It was actually Che's birthday, so he wasn't available to speak after the visit. But, you got to message with his dad. What was his feedback from the visit?
Yeah, Dad loved the visit. I think Che loved the visit. I think you see, if you just follow his social media account, he's always posting about tech and different edits. But yeah, just as a recruit, Che I think is a little bigger than Chooks was or is. I think
A
that's
little.
I think that's helping his recruitment. I think he's also probably a little faster with some of these track.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, I think that's kind of helping his recruitment, but we'll see. I think the Red Raiders are very interested. That's the at least the feedback I got from Dad, and the family. So we'll see what happens there. But he would be a receiver, slot type, and a guy who can return kicks and make plays for you.
No doubt. Well, the last guy I forgot to even put on the list, but I know you and I have messaged about it, so we don't have to spend much time here. But I thought, interestingly enough, he followed through on his word. And Arlington Martin, inside linebacker, Travell Johnson, Texas top 100 player, committed to Texas, for quite a while. I know that he had originally responded to some messages saying, he did want to take these visits after the long wait, but he is committed to Texas. I mean, again, getting these guys on campus, doing the photo shoots, getting them around the program, doing away with all the not negative recruiting, but the perception of what Lubbock is or isn't and what tech is or isn't. That's got to go a long way, right? And if he's on social media posting that and it's out there in this, world of recruiting, then again, I think it's a good thing. I haven't talked much with Travell. Obviously, he's pretty talented. He's got a bunch of offers. But we'll get some more feedback from him. But I just wanted to mention him because, interesting that even with an unofficial visit, you've got another Big 12 commitment on campus.
Yeah, and that's all you can do. And if he's going to drive out 5 hours from Arlington to come visit, it's only a good thing. Now, how often does Tech flip a guy from Texas? Probably not too often, but it's all you can do is you give yourself a chance. And I think it's another Aaron Hodges connection right there. So I keep coming back to that. Every time you look on social media, these recruits are tagging Coach Hodges and they're, and so I just think there's a lot of good work being done there by the recruiting department.
Yeah, I think we should probably, pin this as an idea as the offseason progresses, but we should probably spend a whole podcast on social media because interestingly enough, and I'll do a shameless plug here, but if you are on Instagram, Ben has started RRS underscore, what is it? So I don't butcher it.
RRS_rivals.
There you go. And so we're going to do our best to post all of those articles and links there and all sorts of stuff because, we've been a part of Red Raider Sports and Rivals for a while, but this thing, goes back nearly 20 plus years now. And so, how recruiting is covered changes all the time. And as many people know that Twitter has kind of changed the game for recruiting, I would say Instagram is doing the same thing to Twitter right now because Twitter is just full of aggregation and this and that. And it's still a great platform, but the kids are on Instagram, like flat out. I mean, before they go to Twitter, before they do anything else, it's on their Instagram story. And I know that Twitter has fleets or whatever. But again, another whole podcast we need to dedicate to that because what I would say, RRS_rivals, follow the account. Me and Ben are going to keep that updated, with all recruiting and even the basketball stuff that he does and the rest of our team does. So anywho, so that covers the unofficial visits. But I mean, Ben, that probably already took up 10, 15 minutes of the podcast. So that shows you like opening week, that's pretty awesome to have 5 unofficial visits. And we haven't even covered the underclassmen of note. So I think a tremendous opening week. What we want to do next is focus on the official visitors. So I've posted stories about both of these guys over the past couple of days. We had the transfer from Tulsa, defensive back Ali Green, class of 2017, hasn't graduated yet, but he announced his intentions to transfer. And basically 2 quotes, and then I'll get your feedback on him because I know you've done your research I want you to speak to his, NFL maybe ceiling. But two things. One, he wants to be at his next home the next week and a half. Two, he pretty much said that Tech's the only school like in process of confirming his credits. Now, I also posted expect the unexpected in recruiting always. But I really do think all signs point to Tech on this one, Ben, and then, I'll let you take it from there. But we talked about it last week on the podcast, adding this caliber of talent, a starting corner to your defense on, June 8th. I mean, there's a lot to like about that.
Yeah, like you said, expect the unexpected. But obviously, there's a lot of reason to feel good about Allie Green, ending up as a Red Raider, and he had a lot of good things to say in your article. Being hosted by Marquise Waters, another transfer, so can probably relate a little bit and kind of show him how that whole process went. But yeah, 6'2", I believe he measured in that, and we've talked about him before. He had some great games last year against Tylan Wallace, especially the first game of the year. So there's your, Big 12 competition. But another corner, you can never have enough of them in this conference. And Allie Green, I mean, that's an obvious addition. If you can get him, there's no downside there. That's another guy to come in, compete to play right away. And you already added Rayshad Williams, right, and Malik Dunlap, two other transfers who are corners, along with DeMarcus Fields. So I would assume that's kind of your top four group, with maybe like Adrian Fry also in that mix. But that's just a solid. They're all veterans. They've all played at least 2-3 years of college football. I mean, that's what you want, is experience and guys who can play. So just, Matt Wells keeps stacking the roster with those type of athletes.
Probably another idea as we kind of talk along is I just Googled it. Derrick Jones was announced in February of 2020. So now he's been on campus for, let's call it almost a year and a half. And in the recruiting world, for us to say at the time he was hired that he'd completely flipped the room around and that there would be nothing but graduate transfers and, pretty highly rated guys, available to start on your defense with incoming, freshmen and sophomores on the roster. I mean, that's what you want, right? That's the goal. But, to look at this and see what he's done to that secondary room, I mean, I think it deserves a lot of credit, especially if you can add a guy like this with this amount of starts, with this caliber of play. You've basically upgraded your entire secondary and all of the depth in the span of 6 months.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt that Zach McPherson goes and gets drafted too. That only helps. I can't even tell you who the last Tech DB was to get drafted before Zach. It's been a while, I believe. So yeah, it's all good news. DeMarcus Fields, I guess, was the only guy who was here when Coach Jones arrived, who I guess would prominently figure maybe, among your starters.
Right. Well, again, all signs point to Tech there, and really, a guy. Not only are you getting the experience, but this is a guy that's being talked about in those NFL draft circles. So, again, it just builds momentum and excitement going into the season. I mean, again, the ability to get a hold of those guys, close, get them on campus. I mean, when I talked to Allie, I was like, hey, how crazy is it that all this timing worked out to where you can actually take visits? If you did this a month ago, you're just doing a Zoom and you're flipping a coin and making a decision, or you're following your heart, right? And now you get to go take an official with your mom, and if you wanted to, you could probably schedule more. So anyway, very interesting. But for the sake of time, I'm going to move on. There was one more official visitor that I talked with, Tyler Legacy running back Bryson Donnell. I think, before I forget, I just want to mention, I forget his teammate's name, so keep me honest. I want to say it's Jamarian Miller. But these guys both play in the same backfield for Tyler Legacy. They both had over 1,300 yards. They both had just dumb touchdown and even reception and yardage numbers. And Bryson Donnell has half the offers Jamarian does. Jamarian looked like he was made out of a sculptured clay when we saw him at Under Armour. So I get it. But this kid's productive. This kid's athletic. I mean, he can absolutely play in the Big 12. So I only say that to say you can be thunder and lightning. You can be a dual backfield. That doesn't mean you're going to end up with 1,300 yards and I think like 11 or so touchdowns. So again, pretty impressive from that standpoint. And when I talked to him, just very intelligent, very great answers, very thorough. And he's been in touch with Coach DeAndre Smith a ton. Again, another guy that mentioned Eron Hodges a lot in terms of the week-to-week or the day-to-day communication. And, he just said that mom and grandma liked it a lot as well. He's a kid that's going to go to Colorado and then he's trying to set up a visit with Arkansas as well. So, that's some main competition right now. But in terms of states, schools within the state, you kind of have that lead. And I think what I was telling Aaron and Level on the radio today is what you've got to remember is that in a normal year, a kid can take an OV, turn around and say, I'm committed. Now these kids have been they haven't been able to visit at all. So I don't really blame them. Let's say he left that visit, talked to mom and grandma and said, man, that was awesome. I could see myself playing there. Odds are you're still taking that trip to Colorado. You're still taking that trip to Arkansas. And yeah, that's not great in the grand scheme of things. You would rather get the commitment, but I just think in the expectation has to be that these kids are going to take all their visits and you're going to wait to the end of June or July to really see that momentum occur.
Yeah, without a doubt. And that'll benefit Tech with guys, coming in to visit who maybe wanted to commit elsewhere. And then, it might also hurt them with guys who want to come here, but they're also going to, so it works both ways. But as far as just Bryson, I like the positional, if I'm building a class every year, I like taking, a quarterback every year, a running back, a certain amount of receivers, linemen.
Right.
So there were a few years there. Where Tech kind of maybe ignored the running back position, but now you look at the roster on campus and just the last 3 years getting Taj Brooks, Cameron Valdez, and then, if they get Donnell, I'm not saying they are, there's just a possibility. I mean, those are, would be three potentially just awesome backs to have, three signing classes in a row. So I just kind of like it from that standpoint of just continuing to add talent because you never know who's going to leave or who's going to get hurt. I just, I'm all about restocking the cupboard there. And so, yeah, Donnell, super productive, shares a backfield with a guy who has 30 offers and is a borderline, 5-star recruit, but he's still holding his own and getting a lot of snaps there. So, yeah, I mean, we'll see. We'll see where he goes.
Hey, I mean, if we're playing what if, he could commit to Tech and convince Jamarian that they need to go to college together, like Darren McFadden and the other guy in Arkansas.
Felix Jones.
Yeah, and then they just recreate the whole thing. But anyway, yeah, I mean, so those were all 2022 guys, and those of course not Green, but guys that will be deciding, within the near future. And that took up a lot of time. Now, Ben, I mean, I just got to tell you that feels good because we've been talking about the same crap for a long time. Now let's kind of blow through the rest of this so we can save the majority of this for the board and maybe do some Q&A next time now that we've got a little more relevant recruiting news. We wanted to touch on underclassmen of note. I know I shared some of my notes. If you have any other guys to mention, by all means jump in. But I didn't look up each profile, but these are all 2023 guys except for one. Defensive back Javian Toviano. I wrote down that he has 20 offers and that he's a top 25 recruit in the entire nation, meaning the Rivals 100 for the class of 2023. I believe he's out of the Arlington area, if I'm right. Then running back Sergio Snyder out of the Fort Worth area, still a 3-star right now, but 14 offers and counting, maybe not even rated yet. Another guy, 2023 class that's in. I was corrected on social media today. He was at Nolan Catholic. I guess now he's at another school in Arlington, but Fort Worth, Arlington area for both of those guys. They jumped on I-20 and came to Lubbock. So again, good for the brand, good for your chances. The last guy I wanted to mention was quarterback Marco Stavila. He's a 2024 quarterback, has great size. Once you get up close, you can tell that he is still a baby, but I mean, very promising in the fact that he's going to grow and continue to develop as a quarterback. I had a chance to quickly watch his tape and came away impressed. He spent a lot of time around Coach Cumbie, from what I understand, and he has early offers from both Kansas and Illinois State. So again, when you look at the past year and what you weren't able to do in terms of growing the momentum and turning to Zoom and doing all that, you might see this swell of activity that's been permitted for the 2023 class and below, because you're able to do Zooms, you're able to message with them. There were some rule changes there during that pandemic. So to see the amount of underclassmen on here, those are just three of note. I think you posted, what would you say, 15 to 20 different reactions from campers that were all underclassmen, right?
Yeah, probably more than that. It's probably closer to 30. But yeah, Toviano, just real quick, he was a guy who he was offered last month. I saw him at ESPN last summer when he had 0 offers, and I posted about him. So I'm, kind of proud of that one. You find an unranked guy with 0 stars, and that now he's a top 25 recruit. Snyder, he didn't have an offer.
Sorry, dude. Speaking of, you and I saw that gigantic Jolly Green Giant dude, Austin Kawecki, from the Woodlands, 6'8", 320. He just got a
Sierecki, right?
Oh, I said Kawecki, didn't I? Sierecki. Yeah, sorry. Well, he just got his first offer from Baylor. So just, now that kids are being able to be evaluated in person, might change the game up a little bit here.
Yeah, you were saying he was good, back then. So, he was the best one at the camp. He won MVP for a reason. But yes, Snyder didn't, Sergio Snyder didn't have an offer. He visited, he picked up his offer on the visit. That was another Aaron Hodges guy right there. Another unofficial I wanted to mention, just because I talked to him, is Jackson Lavender. He's a 2023 receiver out of, Lovejoy over here in DFW. And his dad, Jason Lavender, played receiver at Tech in the 90s. And so I just talked to him. Tech offered, and he just told me, he grew up a Red Raider fan. His whole house is red and black. And so, he's a 2023 who has offers from TCU, SMU, Kansas, Nevada, Tulsa. He said he's going to go to Oklahoma State soon, I believe, too. But he's just one of those legacies who, he sounded to me like he was all about Tech. So good on the coaches. He's a slot receiver type. And then a new offer made today, real quick, Micah Tees. And the only reason I wanted to bring him up was because he got 3 offers today from Tech, Notre Dame, and Iowa State. He's a guy out of the Tulsa area, another 2023 athlete. Big day for him with 3 offers.
Yeah, it was definitely eye-opening to see all the new offers and the visits. For me, I think I've said this multiple times on this podcast. I always have open like the offer list and then like a rival search thing, because I'm not good with the names. I'm good with who's been offered and who I know about from this, that, and the other. And in our world, you notice these guys getting 3 offers or even multiple offers in a day. So I had seen a few things, but I had to tie it together. But yeah, again, it just goes back to my point, that swell of underclassmen 2023 momentum. I do think it's real. And I think you see some of the fruits of the labor from Coach Hodges. I don't want to leave out Ashton Washington and Preston Pearson, but the fact that they're getting all this coordinated, certainly Jessica Hearn on the official visits. These are only going to, these weekends, and the amount of visitors and campers, it's only going to continue to get bigger and bigger as more kids finish the school year and more kids have time to take their visits, because it may be Oklahoma State and Baylor this week, but then next weekend it's Tech or whatever. Well, I guess along those same lines, the last thing we wanted to preview, Ben, was the official visitor list for this weekend. That's not going to include unofficials. You may have mentioned the 2022 defensive tackle. I didn't have any others beyond that, but real quick, defensive back Terrion Williams is confirmed. Offensive lineman Caden Weatherby, athlete Jeremiah Cooper, and offensive lineman Alvin Ibosele. So what pops off to me about this list is you've got all different position groups covered, offense and defense, but well, really offensive line. But Terrion Williams, I believe, is from Georgia. Caden Weatherby's from Colorado. Then you've got Jeremiah Cooper from El Paso, which might as well be a different state from Dallas-Fort Worth, which, Alvin's from here in Coppell. So you just have kids coming from all over. To me, Terrion Williams, I wouldn't call it a surprise. He had excellent things to say about Coach Jones. But with his offer list, I don't know. I wasn't expecting it. Caden Weatherby said he's down to K-State and Texas Tech. So, 50-50, you got to like your chances there. Jeremiah Cooper, I mentioned, from El Paso. He just finished an an official visit, I believe. Was it K-State or Iowa State?
Iowa State.
Okay, Iowa State. And then he'll have a few others. And then Alvin Ibasele, it was interesting. We met him at Rivals Camp, and it did not seem like the momentum was there with Texas Tech. And then, maybe 2-3 weeks later, he announces this official visit. So, we'll talk to him more here in the near term. But I guess anything stand out to you about this list that you wanted to mention?
Yeah, just a lot of regional competition. Even a guy like Terrion Williams from Georgia, he took his official last week to Kansas State. So that's
Okay.
another, Tech was in his top 12. Caden Weatherby, another guy, Kansas State, you mentioned is the other one is in his top two, even though he's from Colorado. You're competing against Big 12 schools here. Cooper, I think he did visit Iowa State last week. I think he's probably an Iowa State lean. I think he's gotten some, future casts and predictions to Iowa State, and he's quoted saying he wants to commit, but he's still going to take his visits. But he's a guy from El Paso who hopefully the coaches can keep close to home and kind of sell that aspect of it. And then Alvin Ebosel, yeah, he Baylor and Oklahoma State is the competition there. So these are the type of recruits you want to be competing for, and then you have to win a few of them. Those are the official visits. You mentioned the defensive tackle who is
Right.
coming in on the 10th. That's Anise or Anise. I don't know how to say that. Sledge. He's from Monroe, Louisiana. He's rated as a 2-star by Rivals, but he has 24 offers, including Baylor, Indiana, Kansas State, Memphis, Purdue. So he has a handful of pretty good offers, and he told me he expects the Red Raiders to offer if he moves like he should at camp. Apparently, he's been in heavy contact with the coaches, and I know that Tech historically maybe has not been a school that's recruited defensive tackles all that heavily, and so I'd be glad to see them pursue Sledge, because to me, if I'm building a football team, I want as many 300-pound linemen as I can get my hands on. So,
Right.
so he and then they have camps all week, I believe, on the 10th, on the 14th, on the 17th. So who knows who's going to come in and test well and potentially earn another offer.
Yeah, and we'll see. We'll see what happens with the camps. I will say here, if you made it this far in the podcast, we have received the green light to cover the camps that have been mentioned. So we're working on getting our local Lubbock guys there, and what you could expect there is we'll just have eyes on the campers. We'll be able to look for some of these guys like Ben mentioned. But the interesting part about that is I do believe some of those dates would coincide with official visits. So it would stand to reason that you would have some guys standing around the sidelines too. So that's a new thing for us in the media. And so I'm looking forward to that. I'm excited they're going to let us do that. But that's still an unknown. So once we get some of that confirmed, we'll definitely do some previews, because even though we live in Dallas, Ben and I will be the ones sort of guiding the staff on, what to look for at said camps. But I don't know, Ben. I mean, that's it. I think, for us on the recruiting side, again, that 2023 swell is real and it's coming. And, really what I joined the guys on radio today, they asked me, they said, hey, and this is what I want to end with, because I didn't feel like I had a great answer. But they said, hey, now that we've had visits, who's going to be the first commit? And I wasn't expecting that question. So what I did is I crawfished for a minute, and I said, Major Everhart, and I explained why. And then, I said, guys, the reality is these kids have been at home and unable to take visits. They're going to take more than one. I don't expect a lot of insta commits. And if you do get that, I would be leery of that, because then they're always going to have the option to take visits later in the fall. So, I think, again, all I'll reiterate before I ask you is the sweet spot's going to be late June or early July. Ben, what would your answer be to the question, who will be Texas Tech's first commitment?
Oh man, has Caden Weatherby gone to K-State yet?
I don't think so.
If he hasn't,
I'm not sure. I'll have to
tough.
check.
Yeah, man. I don't know. You got me there. Can I say it's gonna be a basketball commitment with Bryson Williams, who's currently
No,
on his official visit?
you absolutely can't do that. No. Well, okay. All that to say, at least I asked you on a podcast. Imagine on live radio, I probably sounded like a big dummy. So anyway, it's not that easy of a question to answer. But again, that's why I reverted back to Major Everhart. I do think he's a guy that could take a few visits and realize, hey, I know what I want and commit. But the more I think about it out loud, I do think a lot of these kids are going to wait and take several visits. So I don't know. We'll see what happens and kind of see what shakes out on the visit side. Anything else that you wanted to mention here, Ben, before we wrap it up?
No. Like I just mentioned, Bryson Williams basketball is currently on his official visit as we speak, so we'll be all over that. He's a top target, and stay tuned for that one.
All right, man. Well, thanks again to Clayton Carnley and Carnley Properties for sponsoring the Lubbock or Leave It podcast. Ben, have a good evening. Guys, thanks for joining us. Check it out. My son throwing touchdowns at the tech camp. Dreams come true. Proud dad moment. You guys have a good night.